The old woods whispered tales of dread, a chilling symphony conducted by the winter winds. Locals called it the Whispering Pines, but those who knew better, those who had seen its true face, simply called it the entity. It wasn't a legend. It was a haunting truth, a skeletal specter with branches for antlers, cloaked in tattered shadows, its empty gaze fixed on the souls it claimed. This was the domain of Alex, a seasoned paranormal investigator, whose latest case led him to these very woods. Alex wasn't a man easily rattled. He'd faced poltergeists in abandoned asylums, confronted shadowy figures in cursed houses, and even spent a night in a forgotten crypt, all in the name of scientific inquiry. But the Whispering Pines felt different. The air itself was heavy with an unnatural stillness, and the trees, ancient and gnarled, seemed to lean in, their branches like skeletal fingers pointing deeper into the unknown. His equipment, a meticulous array of EMF detectors, thermal cameras, and audio recorders, felt strangely inadequate against the sheer oppressive silence of the forest. He set up his base camp at the edge of the woods, a small, insulated tent that offered little comfort against the encroaching dread. As dusk painted the sky in hues of bruised purple and ominous gray, a light snowfall began, each flake a tiny, cold prick against his skin. He started his initial sweep, the crunch of his boots on the freshly fallen snow, the only sound for miles. The EMF detector remained silent. His thermal camera showed only the familiar heat signatures of trees and rocks, and his audio recorder captured nothing but the soft whisper of the wind. Too quiet, he thought, far too quiet. Days turned into a grueling week. Alex ventured deeper, each step taking him further from the comfort of the familiar. He found no evidence, no residual energy, no spectral echoes. The forest remained stubbornly, terrifyingly silent. Doubt began to creep in, a serpent of self-reproach. Had he finally found a case that was nothing more than local folklore? It was on the 8th night, as the full moon cast an ethereal glow upon the snow-covered landscape, that the silence finally broke. A low, guttural growl, not quite animal, not quite human, echoed from the depths of the forest. Alex, startled, grabbed his flashlight, its beam piercing the darkness. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drum against the growing dread. He followed the sound, his investigative instincts overriding his fear. The growl intensified, leading him to a clearing he hadn't noticed before. In the center, beneath the stark silhouette of the ancient trees, stood a figure. It was tall, impossibly thin, its body a grotesque collection of bone and sinew. Its head, a skeletal skull, was crowned with a tangle of gnarled branches, like antlers ripped from a nightmare. Its eyes, hollow sockets, seemed to bore into his very soul. This was it. This was the entity. Alex stood frozen, his flashlight beam trembling in his hand. The entity took a step forward, its movements jerky and unnatural. The air grew colder, and Alex could see his breath fogging in thick plumes. He tried to speak, to utter a scientific observation, a coherent thought, but his throat was constricted by a primal fear. Then the entity raised a hand, a clawed appendage of bone and dried flesh, and pointed, not at Alex, but beyond him, deeper into the woods. A sound, faint at first, then growing in intensity, reached Alex's ears. It was a weeping, the desperate cries of a child. Alex, despite his terror, felt a surge of adrenaline. He couldn't abandon a child, even if it meant confronting this monstrous being. He looked back at the entity, its head tilted, as if in silent command. Was it leading him or luring him? He made a decision. He would follow. He would save the child. The entity moved with surprising speed, a shadowy blur flitting between the trees. Alex, fueled by a strange mix of fear and determination, followed as best he could, his eyes darting between the elusive figure and the path ahead. The child's cries grew louder, more desperate, and Alex's heart ached with a terrible urgency. The chase led him to an even deeper part of the forest, where the trees grew so dense that the moonlight struggled to penetrate. He stumbled through thick undergrowth, his clothes snagging on thorns, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The entity, always just ahead, seemed to glide effortlessly through the darkness.